Hi guys, today's lesson is about how to create an engaging introduction. And an introduction is actually a lot more complex than a lot of people think. It's important that when writing an introduction, you start out very general and move slowly to something very specific, which ultimately would be ending in your thesis statement. Now, to start out really general, I need to come up with a hook or an attention grabber. So let me show you my trick for doing that. Anytime you get an essay, the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to write your thesis. You're going to go ahead and decide what are the 3 points you really want to focus on. So I'm using a thesis from earlier for an essay prompt that says to compare and contrast the theme of 2 texts. So I'm using the text Divergent and the text Match. So my first point is going to be the theme of Divergent, my second point is going to be the theme of Match, and my third point is going to be a theme that they both share. So when devising a hook, I want to pick something that is going to connect to at least 2 of my points, if not all 3. So what I like to do is I like to come up with a quality or a characteristic that encompasses or maybe describes my main character that I'm analyzing. So I'm analyzing Tris from Divergent and Cassidy from Match. And one thing that I decided to pick was this idea of identity, because they're both really exploring who they are. So I went into Google and I decided to do a quote on identity. Now when picking a hook, I could do a question about identity. I could start with a quote on identity. I could begin with the definition of identity. I could create a simile or a metaphor on identity. I actually wanted to start with a definition, but I didn't really like the definition of identity. I didn't feel like I could build off of it, so that's when I decided to look for a quote. So you can use Google Images as a way to quickly preview the quotes. Just make sure once you find it, you know who said it. So I ran into this one by Elastigirl from The Incredibles that I really liked. And she says, your identity is your most valuable possession. Protect it. And as soon as I saw this, I was like, yes, Tris from Divergent has to protect her identity. Cassidy from Match has to protect her identity. So I'm going to start my introduction with this. And so I can't just list the quote. I need to go ahead and integrate it into the sentence. So let me start my introduction. Okay. And so I'm going to start with my hook. And so I'm going to say, and I'm start indent here, Elastigirl from The Incredibles, and The Incredibles is a title of a movie, so I'm going to underline it. Elastigirl from The Incredibles, and I'm going to say like stated or said that, and so I'm going to integrate the quotes. I don't need a comma, I don't need to capitalize, that your identity is your most valuable possession. Period. Protect it. Okay. So now I've ended my quote, and I want the reader to go ahead and understand why I picked it. So the next thing I do for my hook is I need to introduce my text. But I'm also going to do that by giving a key sentence summary. So not only do I need to introduce my text, give a key sentence summary, but I also want to introduce the idea that's being analyzed. So this is an essay analyzing theme. So I need to make sure that I'm mentioning this idea theme early on. Are you analyzing tone? Are you analyzing archetypes? No matter what that is, you need to mention that concept pretty early on. So I'm going to go ahead and start in, and I'm going to connect this. So I'll say this is a, and I could say message, or I could say theme. You know, I might as well just say theme and be very straightforward in what I'm analyzing. That was true for both main characters, because again, I'm trying to connect my hook to both texts that I'm analyzing. And if you're not analyzing 2 texts, maybe you're trying to connect your quote to introducing your character. So this is a theme that was true for both main characters in Divergent. And I'm going to go ahead and give the author, because this is the first time I am introducing the text. In Divergent by Veronica Roth, and matched by Ali Condi. And I'm going to go right into my summary. As each of their identities are threatened by society. Okay, so just a quick recap what I did here. A lot is going on. I've got a hook, then I connected, and I connected my connect to introducing theme, because that's what I'm analyzing. So it may be introducing archetypes, it may be introducing tone, and titles, authors. I'm giving a brief summary at the same time. All that in just about 2 sentences. Now remember, when you're trying to figure out your hook, the best thing to do is just pick a quality that describes your main character. And as long as you feel like you can connect that quality to what your points are. That's why I picked identity. And like I said, I could have done a direct quote on identity, which I did. I could have done the definition or simile about identity. So now that I have given my hook, I've introduced my text, I want to go ahead and preview my 3 points. This means I'm going to hint to what my 3 points are, although I'm not going to say them directly right out. And I'm going to do this in pen so you can see the difference. Okay, so I'm just going to go right in. I'm not going to say my point 1 is. You don't want to use my, you don't want to use I. So I'm just going to go right in and I'll say Trish struggles to fit into just one category. How did I know to say that? Well, I've already written my thesis, which is the first thing you should always do. And in my thesis, I'm saying people are multifaceted and complex beings. That's my first point, which means there's just not one thing that's true about you. You're not just one thing. You're many things. You're multifaceted. So I said, Trish struggles to fit into just one category. So that's me previewing my first point. And I'm going to go ahead and preview my second one in the same sentence. And Cassidy, my second point then is that society cannot dictate who you are. So I'm going to say, and Cassidy learns, and I'm going to go ahead and say theme again just to remind the reader that's what I'm focusing on. Learns an important theme that others can't control. And you know what? I'm going to say identity again. Whenever I can bring it back and connect it to the hook, I might as well. I mean, I am slowly starting to become more specific here as I introduce my points. And then my third point is that the theme of both texts is one should have the right to choose their own path. So I could say the characters or protagonists, because they're the main character. Use good terminology. The protagonists in each text learn a valuable lesson. Again, I'm bringing in this idea of theme, so I said valuable lesson about self-discovery. Notice I'm coming up with different ways to say my point. I'm not saying it the same exact way. And so now I've previewed my 3 points. I need to end with my thesis, and hopefully you've already written that because that's the first thing you want to write. So then I've got my thesis here, so I'm going to go ahead and just copy that down. Let me do that in a different color so you can see it. So boom, I'm going to go right in and say directly what the theme is. I've been hinting to it already. At this point, you can give the author. You don't have to. You've already stated it, but I usually like to state it again, because this is really focusing my reader on what I'm looking at, is people are multifaceted and complex themes. So that was my first point, and I'm just going to pause really quick. Remember the first time I talked about my first point? Right here. Trish struggles to fit into just one category. So now I'm saying that theme here. That's my first point. And I'm going to go on to my second. I'm going to show contrast, so I'll say while, because my thesis has to be 1 to 2 sentences. So while the theme, again, theme, notice I'm saying theme or archetype or tone, whatever I'm analyzing, of Matched by Ali Condi is society cannot dictate who you are. Again, notice this is in order from when I previewed this point last time, when I said Cassidy learns an important theme that others can't control your identity. That's what I just said here. Society cannot dictate who you are. They're right in order. And then I'm going to give my last point. Let's mix it up. I'll say both texts show that one should have the right to choose their own path in life. Boom. And that was my third point, as previewed earlier. One should have the right to choose their own path in life. I said that each you learn a valuable lesson about self-discovery. That was me hinting there. Okay, so let's recap. I've got my hook. I connect it by introducing what I'm analyzing, which in this case was theme. I introduced my main characters and titles, and I clearly show that connection from my hook, which is why selecting that key attribute like identity is really important, so you can make that transition. Once I do that, I'm going to preview my 3 points. This is separate then from the thesis, which follows. So these are going to seem very similar, but I'm just briefly, slowly kind of weaning my reader into this. So I start out very general, and I become very, very specific, ending with my thesis statement.